Welcome welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to week 9 of the Artist Way. It is check-in time, and once again I'm in a weird place. It's fine, it's just like my home. Those lights are my headphones, so if you see, blinking from the void, it's okay. First of all, I feel like something of note is that at the beginning of this process, it's mentioned in the book or in the earlier chapters that there is a point where a lot of people very much want to give up. So early in the process, that was something I mentioned, that I was kind of like scared of hitting that point, or wondering when I would reach that point of just like wanting to give everything up. And that's something I had a lot of apprehension about. Well, we're at that point. We're in that point. I wouldn't say I feel like I want to give up necessarily. I would say the weeks, last week and this week, have just been really hard for me, really like frustrating. I'm having a feeling like, am I doing this right? Am I going anywhere? Because this is a journey. So like, it's about the journey, but every journey does have to have a destination, if you know what I mean. So I'm kind of like, am I going to finish this process in the same place that I started? I feel like it's easy to say that's not possible, but I don't know. I don't feel like this huge shift or like this huge change, or like I couldn't be here necessarily without going through this book, you know what I mean? To give some props to the book, I do think there's stuff that I've done and that I'm still doing and probably will continue to do because it was a suggestion in the book. And I do think there have been a lot of activities and a lot of tasks that I've gotten a lot out of, but I don't feel like mind blown, if you know what I mean. So I do want to, I'm looking forward low-key to this being over, but at the same time, I'm kind of like apprehensive about it being over, because on one hand, I don't want to keep having to do homework and like struggling in the morning, writing the morning pages, and like struggling trying to think of an artist date or like squeeze in an artist date. But I don't want to reach the end of this thing that so many people say is like the solution and not have the problem solved. And it's it's kind of a doubter to say out loud. But let's get into the material. The first section in this chapter is titled Fear. That's me. And and shocker, I did relate to this a lot in a way that was kind of like, you've got my number, girl. One thing Julia touches on that I definitely am like kind of guilty of is this like emotional weight or emotional burden of the idea of laziness and like straddling yourself with the label of being just lazy. And I definitely, so here's the thing about me. I grew up in like going to prep schools since I was like in kindergarten. I grew up in this like high competition environment, or it was also a religious school. So I have never considered myself like a high achiever and overachiever in a way that I have always been surrounded by people who do. And on the one hand, I see firsthand how much I was protected from, like mentally and emotionally, by just not being that way, and what kind of harm comes with those labels and that like attitude. But on the other hand, it's like when everyone you know is an overachiever, it's hard to not feel like you're underachieving. And like a lot of people learned the idea of like balance from me saying things like, I don't do all-nighters, etc., things like that. Or I've had people say to me specifically that when they're like stressed about something, they just look for my reaction. And if I'm chilling, then they're like, okay, I can chill. And, you know, it's nice to be that person for someone, but then who do I have? You know what I mean? Who do I look to when I'm not chilling? Or like when I maintain the appearance of being chill, but like I'm in doubt, you know what I mean? I do have a lot of fear. And it is something that like I carry through multiple aspects of my life. So I feel like I do carry a lot of that like fear of low key of like anything changing ever. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm so hungry for something to change. And I'm so like in need of like change. So it's such a fight because I want to just like stay here, like in this place that I know I can maintain. But I know I have to fight that instinct like so brutally to like do the to do the things that in the future I want to say I have done. And like honestly, it's only really hitting me now how much that like weighs on me, that I am afraid. And it's kind of like, of what though? Of what? Of what though? Why? Life is just hard, you know? Like, why does it have to be like this? Honestly, I was about to like go go on such a rant that is like Julia would have like read me to filth because it's stuff that I've read her like in the book write down. This is exactly what people say, and I'm like, dang girl, you clocked me. But you know, sometimes you're like, ugh, imagine a life without adversity and like all the things you could do. This is the thought that plagues me. I feel like I have such like high potential, but I don't access it per se because there's so much like struggle just to get to like level ground sometimes. Does that make sense? Like if all the like material obstacles were removed, I feel like I could do such amazing things. But life just like isn't fair and doesn't work that way. So I have to struggle. It's fine. But I want to read this little passage. Fear is what blocks an artist. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of not finishing, the fear of failure and of success, the fear of beginning at all. There's only one cure for fear. That cure is love. Use love for your artist to cure its fear. Stop yelling at yourself. Be nice. Call fear by its right name. So that was nice, but also very like heart stabbing. Kind of. Some there's some stuff I read and I'm like, this doesn't relate to me. And then there's parts, I think this is why these past couple weeks have been so hard. It's because these are the parts that are like, they're like, it's my turn now. So the next section is actually very similar to what I was talking about when it comes to the goal search activity, where I was talking about how the discipline to be able to, like, for example, sit down at your workspace for a set amount of time every day and put in the work, that's like a skill. But at the same time, if you don't have that vision of what you're working for and that like passion, and this section is called enthusiasm, so that, yeah, that enthusiasm for what you're working on, then you're not going to, at least me, I'm not going to get very far. To see the vision, I think, is what makes me lock in, and then I'm like, okay, this is possible, and I can just make it happen. And I think, this was the question I was having earlier, is what is it that brings me to a place where I'm like, what, like it's hard? And I think it's the vision, because I just need to be able to see that there's a path from A to B, and then it's nothing to me to just take the steps. The next section is about what Julia Cameron calls creative U-turns, which basically like self-sabotaging behaviors where like you're moving towards your goal and then you just like run away from it. Or say you succeed at one of your like baby step small goals, and instead of setting another like baby step small goal that's achievable for you, you jump up to the highest possible next thing. And then because you set yourself an impossible goal, you don't reach it and decide, well, I'm not good at this, and just give up. Basically, I see it as going along with like some of the previous ideas of like a door being opened for you and running up and slamming it shut. So along with that idea of fear of failure and fear of success is the self-sabotage reaction of turning and running the other way. That's why it's called the creative U-turn. And Julia's, so to say, cure for this is when you run up to an obstacle you want to run away from, find someone to ask for help and ask them, and then do the thing. if you get like negative feedback, ask someone, hey, how do you normally deal with negative feedback? If you don't know how to get to like the next step that you're trying to get to, ask someone who's been there. And like, is it giving common sense? Yes. However, it's also giving thing many people need to hear and have a very hard time doing. So, at first when I was reading this, I was kind of like, this isn't me. Now I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, this is me coded. Oopsie. Toxic independence. Then the chapter finishes off with a creative block blasting exercise where basically you just vent out all of the regrets, resentments, angers, fears that you have surrounding a project, and specifically include the ones that you feel are really like petty and small and like kind of dumb and childish. just like let them all out. And then when you sort of have released everything negative potentially about this project, you ask yourself, what do I gain by not doing this project? If I don't work on a project, then it can't turn out bad because it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, that means I didn't waste my time doing something that in the end is just bad. And I don't normally think of myself as someone who, like, if it's not good immediately, I give up. I feel like I'm very secure in that in drawing, where if I don't like it, I'm just like, okay, fine, and I delete it, or maybe keep working on it and just, or like abandon it, and I don't feel like that's a waste. I'm really reflecting in this episode. But now, like thinking about it, that is very much how I react to sewing. Maybe because it's such a high energy and like it has such a material cost. When I make mistakes or when something doesn't turn out perfect, I feel much more it, like there's waste, and I struggle a lot to finish projects to the complete end, like do the hemming and add the notions and the closures and stuff like that. And I guess it is because like if I'm, doing a digital drawing or even something on paper, if I don't like it at the end, there's not as much waste. And I said that was the last part, but actually the last part is then you make a deal. I don't fully understand the idea of this deal. I don't totally understand the idea of a deal, but you make a deal and you sign it. Julie has to hang it up somewhere, which I didn't do. A lot of the time she's like, hang that up where you can see it, and I'm like, no. Sorry. I find she puts a lot of power in like signing something, or like the idea of like making a contract. I wonder if that's like a 90s thing. I don't put that much like significance, I think, in my signature in making a commitment. At least I don't think I do. So, finally, we come on the tasks for this week. The tasks for this week, for some reason, doing them was so hard for me. And so, like, they weighed so much on my brain. And I really wanted to just keep putting them off. And honestly, one of them I didn't fully complete, which is to read and annotate your morning pages. So it was like you get like two markers or highlighters, and you highlight in one color actions that you need to take, and in another color insights that you gain from your own like thoughts. And I honestly I didn't read that much of my journals. I was stressing myself out about how long this would take, and because of that, I was not doing it. Again, the theme of this chapter, I was procrastinating. But why was that fear? What was I afraid of? I don't know. There are a few things that I wrote down, particularly for insights. Whenever I wrote myself like affirmations, there were a few times like, okay, there were times where like I was trying to work on like negative thoughts, and turning them into affirmations. And in a few of the early entries, I would be like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to. I don't know how to spin this in a way that is wholly positive and not just, I am not blank. Instead of I am blank. I wanted it to be a full new I am statement that did not include the negative like word or messaging at all. And I had like noted it down like, oh, I have to figure that out. And then I had forgotten in later entries, I had figured it out. So I wrote down that affirmation that I forgot I gave to myself. So hopefully I can use it. And for actions, there were a few things I was like, oh, that's been on my to-do list like for a long time. But they're still on my to-do list. Honestly, I doing stuff is hard, you know. Honestly, I did not get very far with this task and I did not like doing it at all. I was very like, oh my god, this is going to take so much time. And I did feel like I spent a considerable amount of time on it and didn't get very far into my journaling because I didn't write my pages to be read. And I felt like a lot of them were boring, and not in the way of like, oh, morning pages are supposed to be boring, but in the way of like, I don't need to reread these. I know there's nothing in here. Like, I don't need to reread my opinions on movies that I still have. Something that, this is a thing that happens to people who record themselves, where you'll be observing yourself having a conversation and you'll have a thought as the viewer about what you're talking about, and then the next sentence or within the next minute or so you will watch yourself have that exact same thought and say that exact same thing. So to me, as I was observing myself, there were parts where I was like, I know I still have the same thoughts and I'm going to say the same things about these. So what am I reading it for? I don't feel like I was having like breakthroughs in my morning pages. I was just like emptying, which is what they're for. So I don't feel like that's a problem. I was very resistant to this, honestly. I think just from the volume of like stuff to read and the amount of time it would take, I was I was resistant to it. I attempted it, I dragged it out, and I gave up. So not great, but it's what happened. And then the other task I did was to make a list of creative goals for the year, month, and week. Let's see. Let me look at them. I definitely failed the creative goals I had for the week. I didn't do the things. Let me see what's up with the month. Failed. One of them already. I can still do that. I succeeded on this. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this last one within the month, but I'm doing pretty good for the month. For the week, chopped. No. I don't like to share my plans. Sometimes I don't like to share my plans because if I get too many people involved with my plans, they're going to complicate them with their fears. And I know my fears are a little bit unique in that I'm not going to be afraid of the same things that another involved person is going to become afraid of. So if I just don't tell you, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to stress me out about it. I'll make it happen. But honestly, so many of my little goals that I wrote down, I'm avoiding them and procrastinating on them really hard. So maybe I should maybe I should blast them for accountability. Not today though. So that's my week 9. So far bad. And you know what? I'm in week 10 now. Also bad. This is the I want to give up portion of the book, but later this week I'm going to check in on week 10. And then after that, you know, it's just 2 more chapters. And then we're done with the entire book. I have this much of the book left. So I can't give up now. If you choose to stick around, I'll see you in week 10. If not, well, thanks for clicking this video. Alright then, bye!